Intelligence. I'm David.
And I'm Ethan.
And this is our first episode, not to be confused with our pilot episode, by the way. Today we have 4 loosey-goosey topics, I guess, that we could talk about. We'll get into them one by one. But just to let you know what you're going to be looking forward to this podcast episode, we have tech advice, we have gaming, we have movies, which is currently undecided. That's our little...
It just says body.
Yeah.
So that one's probably going to change.
That's going to be our off-the-wall topic where we just talk about movies for like 15 minutes.
Oops.
And then we have tech news, which, I mean, isn't really news to people that are tech-savvy, but like it's still kind of tech news. It's technical. All right. Are you ready, Ethan? Ready to dive into today's topics? Can you stop looking at memes? I swear.
I'm sorry. There's a lot of memes in this Discord and one of them is NASA is investigating what may be the first crime in outer space, with astronaut Anne McClain accused of identity theft and improperly accessing her estranged wife's private financial record while on the ISS. And then someone also posted, despite making up roughly 49% of the population, women are responsible for 100% of the crimes in outer space.
Yes, that is true. No, I heard about that from a YouTube video by the Infographics show. But like they really hyped up like space pirates. The Infographics show has like some interesting videos, but like there's so much filler content. It sounds like a 6th grader trying to write a 4-page essay.
Like, 3 guys are on a boat with 4 cigarettes, but nothing to light them with. So they throw 1 cigarette overboard, and the boat becomes a cigarette lighter.
Okay, the first topic of the day is tech advice, and this is one that I wrote. Mm-hmm. It's titled "Learning Literacy and Tech Literacy in the Modern Age." So,
literacy. That's like, so literacy. If you don't know what that means, which you should. Probably. I mean, if you don't know what it means, then you're probably illiterate.
Yeah,
congratulations. So literacy means you can read, or usually sometimes it's just used as understanding.
The ability to comprehend and interpret information.
Exactly.
So learning literacy, so like not only knowing about technology, but knowing about how to know about technology. And I'll explain that more. But, you know, like, I mean, if you're roughly younger than the age of 25, then you've probably been asked dozens and dozens of times.
Can you fix my Wi-Fi router?
Can you fix this? Can you fix that? Do you know how to do this? Do you know how to send a text with a GIF in it? Do you know how to post on Facebook? How do I unfriend people? Like stuff like that. Or how do I use this program? How do I look up this certain thing? What can I find this on?
Where do
stuff
I
like
find
that.
memes?
Everybody, pretty much anybody who's like remotely good at using the internet nowadays has at some point been bothered by a family or friend, a family member or a friend, because they don't know how to do something on the internet. So, like, Ethan can attest to this, and so can I. As part of Generation Z, we are called tech natives. That's partially why we get really ticked off when people blame phones for things, when, you know, phones really aren't the issue. Again, that's a topic for another episode. But, you know, like, being, like, most of my life, if not all of it, has been, like, the content I've consumed, learning that I've done, a good deal of it has been through technology.
Most of my life has been really depressing.
And nobody cares. Okay. In the latter part of my life, though, the internet's been bigger. You know, like, the internet started in 1994. It was originally the DARPANET in the 70s and 80s. Then it became, like, open to everybody. And
then Terminator was released, and then people got scared.
That's Skynet. You're thinking of something different. So
I know what Skynet is. I know. That's why I made the joke.
Okay, well, Ethan, are you going to post your family vacation pictures on the Skynet?
Yes.
Okay.
And then send some missiles.
Those are some nice pictures.
Thank you, Arnold.
But
oh yes, our guest today, Arnold. I can never.
We're not going to say his last name for fear of
mispronouncing it.
No. So
he will find us.
The internet has been really like instrumental in the vast majority of my knowledge, particularly in related to computers and entertainment technology.
Yeah, like, I have a lot of knowledge from the internet that I use in trivia. Like, I am killer at trivia, but I don't know how I know half of the stuff that I know.
But, like, consider like how many usable skills have you used daily that you've learned from school? Like, do you use anything you've learned in school to a ridiculous degree besides basic skills like reading and writing?
I was gonna say, yeah, the only real like skill would be in like English class when like you learn.
I guess
So,
like
because certain words have certain meanings.
perfecting speech is
Yeah.
something that I think is legitimate. Like,
Yeah.
it's obvious we need an English class, but outside of that, I
Who needs a
can't.
Pythagorean theorem?
I could probably count on my fingers the amount of useful things I've learned from school that I use on a daily basis, or that I can see myself using on a daily basis.
For me, me wanting to go into biology class and
But
science class.
that's specialized.
Exactly, that's
We're
more
not talking
specialized.
about like just like standard like life skills.
I mean, consumer math. Have you heard about that?
Yeah, I want to do consumer
I'm doing
math, but at
consumer
the
math.
same time, I need to take calculus if I want to.
Freaking nerd. I probably do as well.
I have to.
But, like,
I'm strong armed in taking calculus, and I'm not taking 2 math classes at once, even though I have the option to do that.
I'm about to say you have to do pre-cal before you do calculus.
No.
Yes.
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 Really? Oh,
Yes.
I have to do pre-cal then. So, like, compare that to the amount of usable skills that you've learned on YouTube.
Bro, I just learned how to beat Super Mario World 3D Land.
Okay, but, like-
without touching any coins, which is impossible, by the way.
But like, let's take for a minute not the content of the skill, but rather the principle of the skill. You learned how to complete objectives. You learned, it wasn't just learning how to solve a puzzle in a game or how to beat an enemy. You learned a method. You learned a way of thinking about a problem to solve it. All right. And you could argue that for school as well, but
Yeah, no, you definitely could.
you could.
Math is like problem solving.
The issue,
But like I have so much problem solving skill. I'm a killer at, like escape rooms. We should do an escape room.
See, I follow Albert Einstein's theology on mathematics in particular, where if you have the technology to complete a problem, then you should rely on the technology and
Right.
not just yourself. Like I don't need, like, why do I need to know how to mentally factor a polynomial?
When I have a computer that I can look it up on.
Mhm.
And people are like, "Oh, you're being lazy." But like, no, I'm not.
No,
I'm
because
just
I feel
using
like
the things that I have on hand.
as a teenager or as an adult, like as an adult, like anybody who has an office job out there right now, when
Shout
was
out, how
stop saying shut out. But like, how often have you personally used any of the specialized skills that you learned in school?
I mean, unless you're an accountant, then don't talk to us because we don't want to be wrong.
If you're an accountant, you've learned business and consumer math, particularly, which is a different story. But we're talking about like algebra 2, calculus, pre-calculus. That's not entirely relevant to the average person's daily life. I'm not saying we shouldn't have it. I'm just saying, like, as a side note, that currently our education, I feel like it needs to be focused more towards practicality instead of the degree of knowledge, because ever since forever, the United States has been pushing to have their education be the best, and all that's doing is, it's teaching us book smarts, but like, how many kids are like, they know how to factor polynomials, but like, they can't for the life of them survive as adults by themselves.
Hey, remember when back in kindergarten? I don't know if this was you, but this was definitely me. I had such a high reading level, like I was above the reading level.
But now you're at reading.
But
level.
now I'm like,
and that's
no,
because
I'm still above reading level.
but like not as much as you were then, and
But
that's
I'm
because
not
you're
a special kid.
That's
I'm
because
just-
you're that there's actually a study on that. It's because children who have been tested for a higher reading level than the grade they're in, and then later test again and get at grade or below grade level reading, is because they didn't have it. They did not have their reading skill cultivated and developed at the rate that it needed to be, so they fell behind.
No, I'm like still ahead. Like if you've seen my SAT scores, I'm ahead. I'm like pretty far ahead than what the margin is.
Oh yeah,
but
no,
on my math, I'm just slightly behind.
Yeah, I'm in like the 93rd percentile.
I have no idea.
Or no, yeah, 93rd percentile in English.
Is that supposed to mean that 93% of people?
That means I am either on par or better than 93% of the PSAT takers at English.
Really?
Yeah.
People are dumb.
So anyways, we kind of digressed there, but that was still a relevant point. um when the skills you learn in school
Do
are
you just want to turn
more
this episode into talking about?
no. So the skills you learn in school are more specialized towards completing a specific task instead of teaching a mindset. You learn basic rules about like the rules of engagement, but you don't learn about the engagement itself. You just learn about the rules. And the way that the internet has changed that is the internet has made it instead of being some community where like you already have to go in knowing the rules of engagement. There's users of all skill level on the internet. There are 9-year-olds who don't even know that there's a difference between Chrome and Firefox and they click on every ad. And then there's like NSA special agents that are watching those 9-year-olds screw around on YouTube all day.
Yeah,
and then
also, a point to bring up there, they're just allowing kids to get hacked.
Mm-hmm. But the NSA.
But that's if the NSA really is watching us.
I have a friend who used to work for a security firm that was basically part of the NSA.
I don't think they're not.
No, it's
I'm
truthful.
almost 90% sure they're not allowed to divulge that kind of information.
They are not allowed to divulge any particular information. They were just kind of like the IT guys for all the important security people. And he said that yes, they do passive. They do more passive recording than they do active recording. So it's not like there's a dude watching your screen like through the internet.
They just have it.
It's more like they have the basic search and viewing records of whatever their servers or Google servers can aggregate. It's more like they aggregate user experiences than actively listening in unless they have a target they're trying to find. But they'll use like phrases, like they'll search for phrases in particular, like let's say bomb or something. Like if you type bomb, then that could set off a filter on their.
Well, that's obvious. Or like terrorist.
Yeah, you know, like terrorism or like anything related. Like there are a lot of buzzwords that will set the NSA off.
You really gotta think about like what you're doing.
No, this is audio. It's different, and it's not.
No. I meant like think about what you're doing, David. Like when you're searching, you gotta think about what you're searching.
Well, that's the issue with writers is because writers have to look up like what's the blast radius of an ICBM or like how long does it take the body to bleed out. Like it's stuff that you need to learn in order to write a good story for realism. But like at the same time, it kind of sounds like you're plotting something. But besides the point, I'm
so just to be safe, you type because I am a writer.
So
shout out any serial killers.
We're digressing, but I know that
get back to literacy.
The majority of the skills that I've learned related to computer technology have not been because I'm some wizard kid that has lightning through my fingertips and is one with the Matrix. It's because I know how to use YouTube. The second largest collection of like crowdsourced knowledge. Besides Wikipedia.
Wikipedia. Well, honestly, at this point,
Wikipedia is technical, but YouTube can be applicable. All right, so I didn't know how to do any of this. I didn't know how to use Audacity. I didn't know how to record any of this podcast audio. I didn't know how to do anything except maybe click some buttons on a controller for the longest time. And then when I started to get interested in it, I looked it up on YouTube. Everybody's like, when everybody asks me questions about how do I do something on my phone or how do I do something on my computer, they're asking it in a way that like I know what they're talking about, but they don't know how to, like some people don't know how to word it in a way that a search engine would understand.
Oh my gosh,
I've had Mrs. Rab come up to me and say, "Hey David, do you know how to make a video out of pictures with music and stuff?"
You mean like a slideshow?
Like a slideshow with music. And I'm I told
her
I told her I know you can use iMovie or I know you can use something else. That's not my specialty in knowledge, but I know for a matter of fact, there is a way you can find out to do it for free on YouTube. If you look up on YouTube how to accomplish almost anything, you can find someone that's done it and that will explain how to do it. Unless you're like some electrical engineer and you have like really specialized knowledge that you're trying to find. In that case, you either go to a forum or you already, you should already know that. But imagine you like the year is like the 80s, all right? The decade is the 80s. You don't know how to do something. How do you figure out how to do it?
You go to the library.
A lot of people, when they look at new technology, they get scared and they feel like they are insignificant. Like they're not worthy to touch the subject, and they need to ask someone who knows how to do it.
But honestly, if you don't have anyone, the library or the people who work in the library,
there are still real resources at the library, and chances are You know, like if 98% of Americans, I don't know, that's not a real statistic, but like virtually every single person has used a web browser at some point in time. Um, so if you know how to use a web browser, then ask that. You know, like ask Google,
Yeah,
how
Google.
do you do something? So
Yeah.
step one is Google.
Google.
All right.
Okay, but like you got okay. I get how you want to have the most precise answer, and typically you think, oh, the more words I have, the more precise it's gonna be, but that's not necessarily true.
Mm-hmm.
The more keywords that you have, the more precise the search is gonna be.
So Google has an algorithm when you type in search queries that searches for, again, buzzwords. And these buzzwords aren't just like, I mean, it's not like every single word, but like when you type in a question like, how do I make a video on the phone? It's not going to search that entire query. It's going to take the applicable terms, how, make,
And
video, and phone.
Yeah.
And it's going to search for results that contain the majority of those answers.
And a lot of times they'll give you an like
like what iPhone app do I use to make a video?
Yeah.
It'll look for what iPhone app make video. You know, like, so it's extremely efficient, and that changes. That's changed my query vocabulary entirely. You know, like I don't ask anybody anymore like, how do I do like this really long and complicated, you know, like,
well, unless it's like legit stuff, because then you have your Discord pal. Shout out Discord pal.
But I think that Google has changed the way we think about how we ask questions, and people that haven't changed the way they ask questions are getting left behind in the dust because they don't know how to ask about what they don't know about. So allow me to introduce you to the concept of Google search query buzzwords, which we're talking about right now. But when you search for a problem you have on Google, use the least amount of non-essential verbiage or words. You know, like don't puff it up with a lot of filler because that distracts the search algorithm, and sometimes Google will still vaguely search for those. It just doesn't give it priority.
Yeah, because it's still going off keywords, so it'll still kind of get the concept you're going for. But if you want more results,
if you want the most results, use the fewest, the most accurate terms possible. Like when I wanted to learn how to make a YouTube intro, I looked up how to make YouTube intro on Adobe After Effects.
It's just his Minecraft character stabbing a creeper and then turning around like slicing off the head of a zombie.
No.
Epic Enderman 25.
Well, no. So like when I looked it up, I didn't look up how do I make a YouTube intro for my YouTube channel in Adobe After Effects. I just look up how to make YouTube intro Adobe After Effects.
Yeah.
So Google will take Adobe After Effects, it'll take YouTube intro, and it will take how do I make, and it will take those three phrases, and it will be like, all right, here's the top interacted with apparently most accurate result for the question you're asking. And more often than not, you'll get a pretty straightforward answer. It's only when you start to get into like the really nuanced or like niche that's information.
And that's really annoying when you have to actually kind of go searching for it.
And if Google and YouTube fails you, I would say the next thing is Reddit. I know a lot of the people that are probably listening to these first few episodes are friends and family, and some of you might not even know what Reddit is.
Boo. Spooky.
But for like your basic underlying knowledge, Reddit is it's kind of like imagine like an entire social media platform surrounded around Facebook pages. It's like imagine a Facebook page where everybody who's joined to the page can post stuff related to that page.
You do have to be careful though, because that Reddit can be pretty.
Oh, there's a subreddit for literally everything, and they don't have any limitations.
Yeah.
That's what makes it both good and not so good to use.
Yeah.
But
also you just have to be careful in general when you're on the internet.
Yeah. Anyways, and that's part of using the internet is knowing how to use it, and you know, Reddit's a good place to start a lot of times because if you can't ask Google. Or Google can't figure out what you're trying to ask it, What's the general subject matter of what you're trying to do? Chances are there's a subreddit for it. If you look up Reddit, then followed by the word or couple of words related to what you're trying to do, there's probably a subreddit for it.
So, like, if you're looking to make a YouTube intro on Adobe Flash, you type Reddit Adobe Flash
or After Effects.
or After Effects.
So, like, if you need to make a YouTube intro on Adobe After Effects, look up Reddit After Effects or Reddit Adobe. You know, like, but like terms that match the description of what you're trying to do will greatly help you. Like, let's say you need help. You don't know how to figure something out in Minecraft, for instance. You know, Reddit Minecraft, r/Minecraft is is ridiculously large subreddit, and don't be shy about posting. You have to make an account to post on Reddit, but you might not even need to post a question. If it's a common question or a question that seems like it should have a common answer, chances are you can just search it in the subreddit related to the subject, and you can find that question and that answer, hopefully.
Yeah, if you don't want to look for like a specific, if you don't want to search the entire thing, oftentimes if you type the question, you'll find that someone's already asked that question and they already have responses. And if you don't have the responses you want or that are helpful, you can always ask the question again. Like, there's not a limit.
Yeah, so that's the great thing about Reddit, is because it's not like a search algorithm that's designed to try to get the most efficient answer the fastest. It's a community. It's literally a community of people that have come together for the purpose of discussing and interacting with certain content. So if you could find a subreddit related to what you need help with, I guarantee you can ask and you can get answers. So those two skills alone are some of the most powerful skills for learning how to learn about technology. I would say Google and YouTube is the more direct approach, but Reddit is the second best approach.
And then there's also Quora. Have you ever been on those?
Unfortunately, Quora is kind of like it's kind of like AOL. It was really good back in the day, and then like as soon as something remotely better than it came out, everybody left because there's a lot of psychos on it.
Yeah, but like oftentimes when you're searching up a question, you won't. But like, I'm not suggesting don't look up your question on Quora, but don't be afraid to click a Quora link that's in your Google feed, because those can also often be helpful.
The thing with Quora is that it won't let you go to 2 or more different questions from the same browser, because the second you go onto the site, it'll store a cookie on your browser that tracks how many times you visited a Quora link. So if you visited 2 or more, it will force you to try to sign up for Quora.
The freak is a cookie.
It's a text file that's put on your browser by a website to passively track your internet habits.
So I shouldn't have been letting them have my cookies.
You can clear your cookies. You can allow only first-party cookies. It's kind of useful. It's the same type of technology that lets Amazon know what's in your cart even after you close the tab in the browser and you open it up again. It remembers what's in your cart because that cart data is stored in a cookie on your browser. So it's useful. It has its uses. It's just there are a lot of companies now that use it to gather user data and then use that for marketing and analytics, which is why there's a lot of new privacy stuff out.
That's why if you're on the internet looking at something on Amazon and then you go into Facebook, you'll often find an ad for that same thing.
Like that's why like people are like, oh well, my phone hears me, and then they put ads about it and they're listening in on me. That's probably because you've allowed it to. So the thing about Facebook and Instagram
is it switching over to internet safety?
We're kind of, but it's still on topic. A lot of people don't have the knowledge to know what settings to turn on and off, and Facebook has been forced to kind of nudge you a little bit and say, hey, you have privacy settings, by the way. You might want to change those. So you stop complaining about the features that we put on there. Yeah. Like we told you about these features. You just didn't read through the terms of service. Huh? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. So don't yell at us.
And then they'll just like break into your house while you're asleep and snap your neck. But that's a different story. That's only if you insult the great and mighty Mark Zuckerberg. Mark Zucky Bucky. But no, like one of the biggest things about Facebook and the other social medias is that they have settings that you can change.
where you don't have to worry about your phone listening on you. My phone doesn't have pretty much any of the tracking settings turned on. I don't have advanced analytics. I don't have advanced error reporting or crash reports. I don't have personalized ads on anything turned on, and that's just because I know about those settings. A lot of people don't, and even if they've been told about it, a lot of times they just hit skip or next or
But who
accept
reads those?
because nobody reads those. Nobody wants to anymore.
It's like 500 pages long.
You can't have your cake and eat it too, though. You can't not like you can't complain about privacy and then also completely ignore all of the steps to ensure your privacy online. There are tons of super simple solutions to make your privacy basically not even a concern for you anymore, and
my only
almost
concern
nobody does
is pigeons.
They work for the government.
Exactly.
All right, so to sum up what I've been talking about, the greatest tool for learning how to learn about computers, or just the greatest tool for learning in general, is Google. And love it or hate it, Google is the best. YouTube is the second best because YouTube is owned by Google.
But also be careful about. I'll say this at the end.
Be careful about your sources. Don't just click on the most recent thing. Use your critical thinking skills you learned in 6th grade English about Little House on the Prairie. Does this make sense? Does this answer make sense?
Does this link look sketchy?
And then after Google and YouTube, you have Reddit. Reddit is, I wory say, your tertiary option, but it's definitely valid. And I would say if you're looking for the most direct and human answer, I would probably go to Reddit. You just have to find the right community to post in. Mm-hmm. Many Redditors are very friendly. But
some are gremlins.
You have to make sure you're in the right community, though. If you post about a question in the wrong community, your post is going to get taken down. Repeated violations of rules in any subreddits can cause your account to be banned from a subreddit.
There's also a lot of gremlins on Reddit. Lots of 21-year-olds in their basement with neckbeards. So
that's 4chan. That's different.
We don't talk about.
We don't talk about 4chan ever. We don't. We from this point forward, we
might just have to erase it.
One of the topics we do not speak of, merely because I think it's a disgusting site. But it's not like we have to ignore it either. Just because something bad exists.
Okay, we're wrapping up.
We're wrapping up. We have wrapped up. We have wrapped up. The wrapping is specifically for being up.
Speaking of rapping, we can segue that into Parappa the Rapper, which is a game, and our next topic is gaming. Ta-da! See how I did that?
I didn't understand a single word you just said.
Parappa the Rapper.
I don't know who that is.
He's an old PlayStation character.
I thought of Biggie Cheese.
Mr.
Bombastic. He's a fantastic.
You've been talking for 20 minutes.
I've been talking for 20 minutes. It's your turn. Tell me about gaming. Okay. What's on the gaming roster today?
Currently, the gaming roster today is Pokemon Sword and Shield and the implications about DLC coming from Nintendo. Now, they have done DLC before in the form of the Smash Brothers Fighter Pack, and they were planning on doing another one of those.
Well, that makes sense. That's different than a Pokemon game,
But yeah, so the Pokemon Sword and Shield, the Crown Isles, and it's the Armor Isles, Armor or something, and then something, it's like a tundra, Crown Tundra or something.
Yeah.
So these are both new. They're not needed for the full game. You can still experience the full game without buying these, so they're not EA necessarily.
EA locks things behind paywalls. So if you don't, you probably don't know. If you know what EA is, good for you. I'm sorry. If you don't, EA or Electronic Arts is a very popular gaming company. Popular as in it's infamous because they produce full price games, like $40 to $60 games, right?
With the content of 1/3 of a full price game.
Yes. So, back in the day, you could just pick up a cartridge from your local GameStop and you could plug it in your console at home. You could turn it on and you get the entire thing. You could play right through. There would be no extra content, right? Slowly but surely, developers realize that that when they make games nowadays, it's harder than it was before because we have new technologies and such. So as the cost of producing games went up, so did the price tag of games.
And
And that's that's acceptable. Like, if there's more production cost, there has to be a higher price tag. And I don't mind a higher price tag on games. I would rather pay upfront $100 for like a full game than
rather than $100 in the long run with
like $40 for the base game and then $60 in two $30 DLCs.
My philosophy on this is DLC shouldn't be necessary to the story, or shouldn't be more than the base game. In total, it can be more than the base game. You can buy 4 DLCs, each with $20 each, and that be in total more than the base game. But the DLC itself should not be more than the base game.
Two notable examples of things that break that rule of the more DLC than base game are the World of Warcraft franchise and the Destiny franchise. Destiny has a record of producing a ridiculous amount of DLCs. So Destiny was released, I think, in 2015. Maybe 20.
I don't know.
20,
I've only played Destiny 2 for like 7 days now.
It's either 2014 or 2015. It started with the base game. Then it had the DLC. It's like something of wolves, and then there's the other DLC, The Dark Below. Those are 2 smaller DLCs that cost like 10 or 20 each. Then there's the Taken King DLC, which was $40, and you could buy in a $60 pack with the 2 previous DLCs, and it was basically more content than base game.
Okay, now that's different. See, that's combined, but also that's a different situation because at that point, Destiny is free, right? Destiny 2 at least is free.
So Destiny's thing seems to be that after a while, the base game becomes free, and you just have to buy the DLCs. But that still, to people that played from day 0, where they had to purchase it, like in the instance of Destiny 2, I purchased the digital deluxe edition for Xbox One, which was $100. It came with a few extra items. It came with some cosmetics.
And then you started to buy the DLC.
And it came with the base game, and that was $100. I played it on Xbox, and I stopped playing for a few months. I played on PC. I had to re-buy the base game along with the digital deluxe edition came with the first 2 DLCs, by the way. So I got to the first 2 DLCs. Then Forsaken came out, and I had to wait to buy Forsaken in the complete pack with Forsaken and then the 2 DLCs that came after Destiny 2. Then they released Shadowkeep, which is the most current DLC.
And I have that one.
And it took me forever to get that. But in total, for Destiny 2, I have spent $100 for the digital deluxe, $60 for the 2 DLCs in the normal pack on PC. And then I have spent combined I've spent $200 on Destiny 2, basically around $200 on Destiny 2, and then I spent $60 on base game and Taken King Destiny 1. So I've spent almost with a few other extra minor purchases here or there, I've spent roughly a little bit under $300 on 2 games, and I love Destiny, and I love the content they put out, and I'm happy that Bungie has separated themselves from Activision. But
Activision is also a big
Activision's kind of like
agitator.
But I think that the way that they did it punishes day 0 players. It really punishes everybody.
Also, I think the argument that it's not fair to day 0 players is just a little dumb.
Why?
Okay, if you're going to buy a game and then complain about changes that happen later, maybe you should have just waited.
But you don't. What if you didn't know that it was going to become free later? I bought Counter-Strike for $15 the day before it announced that it became
That's just
free.
bad luck.
That's bad luck. But here's the thing.
Okay, but you never know what's going to happen anywhere.
You don't know what's going to happen. But with Destiny is punishing for new players because the players that join after, like the base game becomes free or all the DLCs come out, they don't, they're way weaker than everybody else, and they don't really know what to do. There's a lot of resources for them, and that's related to our previous topic. But nonetheless, they have a lot of catching up to do. They didn't have to pay as much money, but they have a lot of catching up to do.
Now, how do you feel about in-game purchases like currency?
Silver in Destiny in particular, I think that the way that Destiny's implemented it is broken, but I think that cosmetics, buying cosmetics is not an issue for me as long as the cosmetics can be toggled by other players, which a lot of times they can't be. like players can toggle whether or not they see cosmetic items or not.
Like you think that
I feel
if someone was to buy a cosmetic that you didn't have, you wish there was a way that you could turn off seeing that.
No, because cosmetics change the color palette or the sprite of your character. That has tactical advantages and disadvantages. Brighter skins will cause you to stand out more. Darker skins will cause you to blend in more. It's a very big issue in the Rainbow Six Siege community where the Shifting Tides operation came out, I think.
Yep, that's the most recent.
And
how about the season pass for that, by the way?
And some new skins came out for the players, and both weapon and character skins. And when a tournament came around, all of the this one big esports company, they bought all of the weapon and player skins for their players, that matched the environment of the maps the best.
So the argument of skins don't make you better or worse is kind of not true.
Kind of not true.
Give you an advantage.
Because if you buy the right skin, you can blend in better with your environment, and it causes enemies to have a harder time to notice you. That was a big issue that's been talked about in the Rainbow Six community, but I haven't heard that argument made in other communities yet. And I think that's because there are few other games, there are barely any other games that are as complicated as Rainbow Six Siege. It's a lot of tac realism type gameplay. It's based heavily on your skill as a player instead of the mechanics of the game. Whereas a game like Destiny is heavily based on weapons. The weapons, how long you've played the game.
Yeah. It's really a combination.
Your skill is not you don't need skill to be good at Destiny. You just need to be able to do okay. It's not like you're saying you could just walk around and have no idea what to do and you'll get fine. You have to know what you're doing. It's just there's very little that can separate the long-term grinder from the short-term high-skilled player in Destiny 2. And I think that's great because that's great for casual players and it's great for intense competitive players. But in a game like Rainbow Six, that's not the case. It's very action-packed, fast-paced, and anything that can give you the slightest advantage you should take. And
I have not played Siege in forever. I'm in a Discord about Siege, and my friend is trying to make a YouTube channel about Siege, but I have not played in forever. I am probably garbage.
I actually play a little bit of it now. I bought the base game, very, very base game.
I bought the season pass. I just haven't used it at all.
I have only maybe 5 operators unlocked. But that's one thing I don't like about Rainbow is that I guess you could buy the operators with the renown that you earn in game, but the newer ones are so expensive.
I wasted. Well, yeah, but I wasted it on Caviera.
You waste so much time earning the characters that I guess it's skill building, but I would rather be able to
open a loot box for them.
No, you can.
That's another alternative.
That's an option. But
no, you can't. You can't open a loot box and get a character.
You can get an alpha pack and that can unlock characters.
No way. Seriously?
Yeah.
You're 100% sure?
I'm pretty sure my friend got Rook from one.
Rook is a base character. I'm almost certain.
Nope.
He's a season 1 operator.
Very, very base though. You start the one that we both purchased. It was you only got recruit. That's the only one you got.
Oh, you didn't buy the one. Okay, that's kind of dumb on your part though. It's only a $10.
The sale was the sale was $7 versus $9. I had $8 in my account. Ethan, what do you want me to do?
I don't know. Not be poor.
Listen.
Okay, so back to Nintendo, because this is kind of unheard of them. Mm-hmm. Well, I wouldn't say it's unheard of them, but before the Switch, I can't really think of DLC that Nintendo had. I don't even know if the DLC for Smash Brawl and Melee, it probably was purchasable. It probably was it was probably behind a paywall. But before the Switch is really where they started DLC and stuff like this, because with ARMS there was I'm pretty sure there was microtransactions with ARMS. There's microtransactions with Smash, now Pokemon. There's plenty more. I'm just slow.
With Smash, I don't think that's much of an issue because it's very similar to Rainbow Six.
But there's also Overwatch.
It depends on how it's implemented, honestly. Overwatch is different. You get
So
you
yeah,
get all the characters when you start in Overwatch. You just need to unlock the cosmetics, but that's not
with
necessary.
Overwatch porting over to the Switch, Nintendo is definitely switching. Okay, forget that pun, but they're definitely switching over with the Switch
Mm-hmm.
in terms of how they're starting to run their company.
Well, Nintendo has enough money saved up where they can literally like not make a profit for 75 years, and they still have enough money in the bank. Like they can afford to screw around and lose money on stuff. Um, like they thought that they were losing money on the Nintendo Wii, but as a matter of fact, they made giant profits off of it.
Hashtag Wii Resort is best game ever.
And we're not like, imagine if Nintendo still got a cut of money off secondhand sales. You know, like the used Wii market is ridiculous. But I think that
I gotta sell my Xbox 360. Like it's just sitting in my closet and almost crushed my head when I was sorting out my closet the other day.
so I don't think that DLC is bad. I think that
I don't think it's bad.
if you produce content after the game that's relevant to the game, and you need to pay people in order to make it, then it's reasonable that you should sell it as a product and not give it away. I do think though that you have to do it the right way. You shouldn't overcharge your customers for optional content.
Also, speaking of DLC, if someone could in the comments explain this to me, but I have Star Wars Fallen Order, and I haven't purchased any DLC for that, but I was playing it yesterday, and I noticed there was an emitter, a sleeve, material, and a lightsaber color, all that said like premium content, and it was just unlocked. So I think they might have released DLC that was free. I may just be really slow and don't remember purchasing it.
If that's EA, I doubt it. I don't know.
It might have been EA. I need to.
But sometimes they'll do that to get
is.
players to buy more DLC because they get a taste of it and like, oh, I need more. But I think if you're gonna produce either optional or post base game content for a player base, it needs to follow a few rules. It can't be overpriced.
Can't be more than the base game.
It certainly cannot be more than the base game in either content or price. It cannot give players an unfair advantage over other players who don't have it. If both of them are playing together, if you release DLC for a game, but then you separate the player base by people with the DLC and people without it, that's fine.
Oh, so it was pre-order content and they just now unlocked it for everyone.
Okay, so
sorry,
but I just it can't put other people at a disadvantage just because they couldn't spend the money on an option, like most of the time an optional product. That's kind of what happens with Destiny. You miss out on content when you don't buy the new DLC, and other people have better weapons than you because it's from the new DLC, and they absolutely destroy you in multiplayer games because you all play on the same servers regardless of who has DLC or not.
So yeah, if you're going to put something in there that is different and that definitely shakes up the base game, then maybe you should put them with other people that have DLC. And
you should certainly separate it.
I don't even know if that's like possible.
Well, that's what they did kind of with Xbox and Destiny. So for the longest time, before the Rise of Iron DLC for Destiny, all the way up until Taken King and the April update for Taken King, they had Xbox One and Xbox 360 servers. All right, they're already separate servers because they're different platforms, but you could have like you were given when the Rise of Iron DLC came out. They said, hey, this DLC literally cannot physically run on the Xbox 360 hardware. So we're going to allow players who have a 360 save to port their account save over to their Xbox One. Same thing for PlayStation 3 and PS4. So there's a window of opportunity and it closes at this point. But for me as either a 12 or 13-year-old kid, I didn't have the money to go run out and buy an Xbox One and the DLC.
Yeah,
and the new game, because it wasn't just buying Rise of Iron at that point. I had to buy Rise of Iron, which was like $40 or $60, and then I had to buy the base game. Then I had to buy the Xbox, and I believe there was some sort of like complete pack that was like a $20 extra that included the base game with it, so it wasn't as much. But still, that's buying the game again, and buying it on a different console, which at the time was like $300 to $400. Just so I could get the newest content on a game I already had. That was technically speaking like a $460 DLC.
Technically.
And I was really upset about that for the longest time, but I heard that it was really great, and that's what made it worse. I was kind of jealous, but I'm just glad
baby boy.
I'm just glad that now that almost every single game's on the current gen consoles, and that all the newer consoles going forward are going to be almost entirely backwards compatible. It's not going to be as much of an issue anymore.
Do we have enough time to talk about how much time do we have left?
We're currently at 44 minutes and 50 seconds now.
True. Okay.
We can keep going. Let's
go to 50, and if it runs over, then let's not worry about it. But let's not go past an hour. Okay, so let's talk about if you get DLC and you don't like what you have, because that's happening recently with Byleth being the 5th DLC fighter for Smash Brothers. People are not liking the fact that there's another Fire Emblem character. It's not the fact that it's another Swordy, though some people are saying that it's a sword fighter, and we already have a bajillion. But I'm more upset that we have another Fire Emblem character when this has broken the trend of all third-party characters with not necessarily new, but with third-party characters with kind of unique movesets. And then Byleth just comes along, and it's not only another Fire Emblem character, but it's not a third-party character, and like some of its moves are kind of similar to others. But don't base me on that last argument, because it's not that good. Mainly the Fire Emblem character and not a third-party character. Now, Nintendo, usually you can tell by the trend that they're going on what they're doing, because they don't usually announce what they're doing. Or what they do, but they don't really tell you exactly what it is. But usually you can tell from the trend that they're going on. So most people assume, first it's Joker. That's a third party. That's pretty cool. If this is the only third party character in the game. I mean, in the DLC. But then Hero comes, and then Banjo, and then Terry. And I was like, who could this new third party final character to finish this up and like put a nice little bow on this entire present be? And it's just Byleth, another Fire Emblem character, when there's already like 7 of them in the game.
And that's Joker from Persona, right? Like, obviously not the Joker from the DC universe.
No, yes, it's Joker from Persona, but Joker is in Mortal Kombat 11.
How about another DLC character, Murray? Okay. But yeah, you can't really do much about a DLC you don't like besides not buying it. And companies might see that metric enough, and they'll be like, all right, well, people don't like this. We'll make something else.
And then there's EA, who just doesn't care.
It's all about what makes a company money. If people publicly outcry the new content, but they still have high sales, it's like two conflicting things. It's like, shut up, I hate your product, but take my money. Like, they don't care about you hating their product if you're still gonna buy it anyways. Like, Walmart doesn't really care if you hate Walmart, if that's the only place you shop at.
Remember back in the day when boycotts were actually kind of like important?
They were a thing?
Yeah, boycotts were actually a thing.
I remember when companies cared about their consumers more about their profit than their profit margins.
Yeah.
I don't.
That was crazy. No, we don't remember it because we weren't alive. It's always been money. But remember when boycotts were actually like a scary thing to companies?
Yeah, like people were actually scared of having their company boycotted or whatever. But it's not that big of a deal anymore because so many companies have just become like uber corporate.
Yeah.
And it's
just gods now. Like, no one's gonna boycott Disney. That's literally impossible at this
point.
Like,
how can you boycott something like Disney? It's the largest companies that need to be boycotted the most when they make a mistake. It's
physically impossible.
But you can't. Like, Amazon has a track record of iffy ethics, and so does Facebook. But how are you going to boycott Amazon and Facebook? It's like, it's almost as if you're technically having a right removed as a consumer. That you cannot protest a product that you don't like anymore because it's just not logistically possible.
I'm gonna turn on the light.
And I think that's something that you can't really change unless you change the way you boycott. You can always like raise awareness for stuff. You can like say that you're against it, but at the end of the day, something else to think about. Just the little devil's advocate. Let's say you don't like a company, but you like their product. Then, just buy the product. It's not going to kill you to eat at Chick-fil-A if you don't agree with Chick-fil-A's beliefs.
It's good chicken, though.
It's chicken. It is literally a chicken in between two pieces of bread.
Like I've already bought the DLC fighter pack, and I'm gonna buy the second one.
Mm-hmm.
I just, but it's okay to not like something that you buy.
Mm-hmm.
You can dislike one part, but still like it as a whole. Like I'm not regretting that I bought the fighter pass, and I'm still gonna buy the second one. I just think
you might not
you might not
like the choices made by the company that made the product.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if you still enjoy the product at least a little bit, then their objective
it's not
is
a complete waste of money.
They've sold a product to you. That's their primary goal. And their secondary goal is that their product is good enough that you, as a consumer,
will return to buy it again.
Their returning customers is important. But why did the company sell a product besides making money? They sell products because they found something that people need. And if people don't need it anymore, they're going to stop making it.
Exactly.
So if they can find something that a consumer wants or needs and they can make it, then they can make money off of it, then a company's happy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the bottom line. It's supply and demand. People that can supply the demand are, it's just as simple as that. There's nothing more, nothing less. If a company can make something people like and people buy it, or something that people don't like but they still buy it anyways, then a company's set. The company's fine. It just depends on the pricing at that point. You have to match the price to the demand for the product.
Yeah.
And that's something that DLCs don't really do very well. And I'm just gonna leave it at that. It's up to interpretation. I'm not gonna go into another rant because we're at over 50 minutes now.
I was gonna cut this with saying I know we said we were gonna talk about movies and technology advice, but I think we might have to start cutting back on just two topics.
We can go. I will say that we can probably go to an hour and a half safely. Safely, that is. So let's just closing statements on gaming and DLC. Supply and demand. Companies have to gauge how popular a product is, and they have to make sure that they do it effectively. Companies have to produce a product that people will buy, not just because they need it or because they think they need it. So they'll enjoy it.
Also, it's okay to take a risk when you know that a company produces good stuff, and you just take the risk of that this DLC or whatever they're producing is gonna be good, and maybe you find out that it's not good, but maybe this is just a hiccup, and if it's repeatedly not good and you realize, there's just been a change of the higher ups and the quality just isn't the same, then it's okay to drop that company.
In today's very, very closing, I sound like a pastor, but
yeah.
I'll end with this. Don't ever think ever that companies lord over you. They can try, but the whole purpose of America's economy is so that the consumers control the companies. There is Nintendo, Xbox, PlayStation. If you don't like one of those companies, you can always move to another. There is nothing stopping you except whether it's financially feasible for you. Companies aren't out there to make everybody happy. It's never a company's goal to make everybody happy. A company would rather make a very select amount of people very happy than make a lot of people somewhat happy. Because when you have a dedicated consumer base, it's better than having a widespread consumer base that isn't as dedicated. And that's what it all comes down to.
And that is where we'll end gaming.
That's where we'll end gaming.
Now, do we want to skip movies and just go into technology news?
We could go into tech. We can go into tech news.
Because we have to.
It's
probably if. I don't know how much you have prepared, but we might have to cut tech news short.
No, I can summarize tech news really quickly. Tech news isn't even that long, as long as we don't get off track.
Right. I'm not gonna
saying that now, but
do you want me to stop you if you start to get off track?
Yeah. So here's what I'm going to talk about. Sum it up. I'm going to talk about AMD and Intel, two CPU producing companies.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to talk about how AMD is currently becoming better than Intel, and why it's happening, and a little bit of history behind it. All right. If I go off in other things that aren't related to AMD or Intel anymore, then let me know, and I'll get back on track, because I want to make this sweet. I don't want to confuse people, because this is a little bit of an advanced computer topic. But I think this is something that's really interesting, and it has implications beyond just what you put inside your computer. It has implications for the economy in general, and
because Intel's a big player.
The products that you use every day run on most of this technology.
Because Intel is a huge player.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's
Not
start.
anymore, actually.
Okay, well, let's
Maybe,
start.
but all right. So the official title that I have for it is Intel, the AMD at home.
I don't know what that
Like,
means.
Mom, can we have Intel?
No, we have
Or, Mom, do we
AMD.
have AMD? We have AMD at home. AMD at home is Intel.
Oh, okay.
So there's two basic companies. There's AMD and Intel. They produce microprocessors, specifically desktop and laptop processors.
We're
or
just
CPUs.
not gonna bring up the fact that, how companies that basically own how you can basically have a monopoly as long as one other company also has a monopoly of it. We're just not gonna talk about that.
Well, there's a lot of microprocessing companies. There's a good amount. It's more than just processors. There's like the little chips and stuff. It's way less. It's way more diverse than it looks on paper. But I'm just gonna talk about the two biggest players. Historically, AMD and Intel have traded blows. Intel being in the lead most of the time in terms of core count and clock speed. So core count is the amount of physical processing cores you have inside of a processor, and the clock speed is the speed at which the processors can carry out instructions. AMD started to pick up speed in the early 2010s, late 2000s with the AM3 socket CPUs. So AM3 is the name of the scheme for the kind of like, I would hate to call it a port, but like a port for a CPU on a motherboard. It's the socket for the CPU on the motherboard. They just called it AM3 because AM2, AM3, AM4.
That's how late I wake up.
So the CPUs are for the AM3 socket, which later becomes AM4 compatible. So most of the AM3 or AM3 Plus socket CPUs can also be used in AM4 motherboards. Other way around is not true. So AMD actually committed a very big oopsie when they basically lied about the core counts in their CPUs, because there's two technologies. There's cores and threads. So like a core is like what does the instructions, and a thread is kind of like half of a core functionally speaking. It's two different technologies, but functionally speaking,
so that's like
threads and cores are kind of like different cones in your eyes. They do different things, but functionally they have the same properties.
And I have messed up cones because I'm colorblind.
So
Does that make me a cord?
AMD said that, like for instance, with the FX 8350 processor, they said it had 8 cores at something. It was a high gigahertz count. It was a high clock speed. And everybody was like, "Oh yeah, cool." But then,
oh cool, didn't ask.
Turns out physically, it had, I believe, half of the cores, and then it had threads that made up for that performance. The technology called hyperthreading, which is basically universal now, but back then it was kind of new. So AMD just marketed it as extra cores instead.
That's dumb. That's lying.
Yeah,
that's false marketing.
That is false marketing. So AMD just recently had to reimburse lots of customers that were still actively using AM3 CPUs, I believe. I think it was part of like a class action lawsuit. I'm not sure.
I'm not just straight up false advertising.
I'm not entirely sure how it went down, but somebody got paid. Bottom line, somebody got paid. But now they marketed it as cores and threads. So the Ryzen 5 3600 CPU AMD has 6 cores and I believe six or 12 threads. Typically, the thread count is twice the core count. My AMD...
That would make sense.
The AMD Ryzen 3 1200 CPU in my desktop has 4 cores and I believe 8 threads. So the threads just kind of make it fast.
Well, if it's half of a core, then wouldn't 2 threads make 1 core?
Kind of. It's a little bit difficult. It's not exactly like that. This is a very, very rough explanation of it. Okay. But AMD kind of got some flack for that, and also their processors were very power hungry. They required a lot of electricity to run efficient. They weren't really efficient. Intel CPUs, on the other hand, were more efficient. They were a little bit more expensive, but they had for the longest time higher single thread performance, and that means like they with less cores they had higher clock speeds.
No, it's starting to sound like AMD is the Intel at home.
Yes.
So how does
in the
that
early
just completely switch
2010s,
up?
in the early 2010s and late 2000s, AMD was kind of like the underdog.
So how does that switch up?
They went to Intel almost had like 60% market share, and AMD was kind of like basically almost non-existent for the longest time. But it picked up in 2016 with the release of the Ryzen series AMD processors, which at first were kind of considered like budget options for gaming. Then they released or gaming and productivity. Then they released the Ryzen Threadripper, which had 16 cores and 32 threads, which is stupid. It's
stupid good or
stupid good.
Okay. They're just stupid in general.
And it was a little bit pricey. When they first came out, the processors, the Ryzen 3 1200 was like $120. Currently the Ryzen 3 1200 is like $50. So it kind of sucks because I have that CPU and now I can't resell it for good money.
Why not?
Because it's not going to be as much money. I'm going to make back like 25% of what I spent on it.
How much did you spend on it?
I spent $100 on the CPU, and then I'm probably going to have to sell it for like 25.
Why
because
are you selling it?
I if I sell it at all, I might not even.
Why would you sell it if it's so good?
Upgrade to a new one. But besides the point, Ryzen came out and Intel was kind of like, ooh, oh, look at that, that's cute. Because Intel had
adorable
slams. Like Intel was honestly like the power player for the longest time in the early 2010s, because they had the Intel i5 and i7.
I was looking into buying an i7 for my mom's computer so I could use it as a gaming PC.
Yeah, if it's a MacBook, you can't switch it out.
It wasn't a MacBook. It was
or
a PC.
A PC. All right. And if you do that, be very careful. I can help you with that.
I wasn't. I've given up on that dream, like most of my other dreams.
So Intel was they still have very powerful CPUs. They weren't that concerned. Then they released Ryzen 2 on the Zen Plus architecture.
Did you see the ground shaking and the water rumbling?
Yeah, it was like
Ryzen 2.
It was like that. The Ryzen 5 2600 is currently considered one of the best budget to performance CPUs right now. At 6 cores, I think 12 threads, and it runs at 3.6 gigahertz. That's very respectable. It can boost up to 4.1, which is very good. And for the price tag, I think of like $160, it's very good. And Intel realized, oh crap, our CPUs are like $300 to $400.
Really
yeah, they never really had competition. So Intel's like, oh, our CPUs are like $300 to $400, and they're like, now they're just as good, if not worse, than the new AMD CPUs. So we're gonna have to drop prices or release new stuff. So they kind of did that. They kind of didn't.
Is this recent?
Somewhat recent. This is like 2017, 2018.
Okay, you need to speed it up because we're in 2020.
I know. So Intel kind of screwed around, released some other stuff.
They didn't take it seriously.
Yeah, they didn't. So then Intel released, up to the most recent CPU releases, the flagship super consumer CPU is the Intel Core i9 9900K. K means it's unlocked, so you can overclock it.
I don't know what clocking means.
Base clock is 3.6 gigahertz.
What's a clock?
The speed at which it can carry out instructions.
Cool.
The boost clock is 5 gigahertz on the 9900K. Has eight cores and 16 threads. It's part of the LGA 1151 socket. That doesn't really make sense to you, but it doesn't matter. It has a price tag of $472.
Whoa, that's the most recent?
That's the most recent flagship super user CPU. Compare that to AMD's Ryzen 9 3950X that has a base clock of 3.5 gigahertz, 1.1 gigahertz less than Intel's base, but it has a boost of 4.7, so still a little bit less, but it has twice the cores and twice the threads at 16 cores and 32 threads.
So basically, Intel is kind of behind on what AMD has had.
It's a little bit faster, but it has half of the cores, so that makes up. So AMD's core count makes up for its little bit less speed. But guess the price on the 3950X. Guess the price.
Is that the Intel or the
AMD? Guess the AMD's price.
Well, if Intel was like 400, I'm gonna say AMD is like 100.
No, so Intel is close to 470. It's 472. Then the AMD CPU is $399.99.
Oh, not bad.
Obviously it's for $70 less.
Not bad in relation to the Intel, is what I'm saying.
$70 less, you can get a CPU that has twice the core and threads, has much cheaper motherboards and compatible equipment, and overall is just a better product. Like, it's objectively just a better product in terms of price to performance.
Do you have that?
I don't. The AMD cost per core is $25, and the Intel cost per core is $60.
So basically, Intel is trying to rob you.
Basically, Intel. So there's an issue. Like, it's not just because Intel didn't want to care about AMD. Intel was trying to ignore the fact that it could not update what's called a lithography. For the longest,
they were living in the past.
For the longest time, they were etching out CPUs in silicon based on a 14 nanometer process. All right, and that was fine.
What does that mean?
Pretty good. It's the size of the CPU die. The smaller you can make the CPU die, the more transistors you can put on it, the more processing power you can get out of the same size. That's why smaller lithography is better than larger lithography. So AMD is currently running on 7 or 10 nanometer. All right, so that means AMD can squeeze more transistors into the same space as Intel and get more power out of it. AMD is moving to 5 nanometer with mobile processors, and starting I think this year or next year, almost all of their CPUs will be in the 7 nanometer process, which is half of the 14 nanometer process that Intel's been stuck on since 2017. In other words, it's not that Intel didn't think AMD was a serious competitor. It's that Intel kind of like got stuck in mud on the off-road racetrack and couldn't get out of the mud, and AMD like whizzed past it. So like, Intel's trying to do their best. They
basically, what, closing line, they should have taken AMD seriously, but they didn't, and they didn't expect.
See, I wouldn't have either. As Intel, I would not have taken AMD seriously when they came out with the Ryzen series.
You always take any kind of competition seriously. Let's be honest.
When you understand the fact that Intel has 60% market share at its peak these 2 decades, that must have given some hubris to the stock, to the investors and to the company owners. But now that AMD is far better for almost like everything. Like, build guides in 2016 through 2017 were all Intel. A little bit of AMD, but all Intel. Now, I'd be hard pressed to find a build guide made in the past like 7, 8, maybe even 7, 8 months, maybe even a year, that has an Intel CPU because they think it's better than an AMD CPU. Like, they'll use Intel CPUs. It's not like Intel has bad CPUs. It's just Intel has expensive CPUs, and I don't think that they're worth it for the price. So that's where AMD is better. AMD isn't better in terms of raw performance. It's better in terms of cost efficiency, and that more than makes up for the discrepancy in performance, in my opinion, and almost everybody else's opinion. So people that cashed in on people that purchased AMD stock in 2016 and kept it up until now, probably very happy people. I congratulate you for seeing that market change with Ryzen 1. But what this means for Intel now is Intel's had to sell their networking. I believe Intel sold their networking thing to like their department to Qualcomm, because Intel also makes network interface cards and networking technology. I'm not sure who bought it. I think it was Qualcomm. Don't quote me on that, but Intel's sold a couple of their departments. They've made some changes. They've like kind of released a new CPU. It's called the i9 1099K, or I don't know, 1098XE actually, which is a model after the 9980XE, which is like the AMD 3950X, but like ridiculously more powerful. In other words, Intel's trying to come back, but they are struggling, and I think it'll be a while before they become a serious competitor to AMD in terms of price performance again. Mm-hmm. So that's pretty much all I have to say about it. So what this means for you as a consumer is that AMD laptops are probably going to have better performance than Intel ones. Newer
laptops. I don't have enough money to buy.
If you're in the market for a laptop or desktop, go for ones that have AMD CPUs, because
I don't know. The one that Andrew has is really nice.
Andrew has basically the MacBook of. So for reference, our friend Andrew.
They know who Andrew is.
Has a Microsoft Surface laptop.
It's really nice.
It's really nice build quality, but in terms of performance, it's iffy. If you are buying a laptop or need to buy a laptop or are considering purchasing one, buy AMD. Find a laptop that has an AMD CPU in it.
Wait,
It's going to be better
does
priced.
Microsoft have an Intel, or
What?
does Microsoft have an Intel?
Microsoft uses both. As a matter of fact, the newest Asus line, which is not by Microsoft, but still, the newest Asus line of flagship laptops for gaming and productivity
Gaming.
have all AMD CPUs. Not a single one of them has Intel variants.
Cool.
So that just shows you, like, for the longest time they exclusively used Intel. Now their flagship lineup is AMD.
Yeah, I remember reading about
that's
that
like,
when I was looking at laptops. This is a lot of Intel processors.
yeah. So keep an eye out. A good laptop will probably run you anywhere between $700 and $800. All right, around the same cost as a desktop. That's like maybe 125% of that performance. Don't spend a couple $100s on a cheap laptop, please. I am begging you. You will hate it in a year and wish you never bought it. Pony up the extra cash and buy yourself a decent laptop.
I found like $70 in my drawer today. I was really happy.
Really nice. I wish I could do that. I wish I had the superpower. But don't buy like a $300 laptop for your kid who says he needs to do gaming and homework on it.
I just need homework.
Or just even, honestly, just even homework. Like a $300 laptop is not going to cut it today. And you know, you might think, well, that's a lot of money as is.
But also Word is very expensive.
Full
Also,
on computer technology is very expensive.
Alternative for Word, literally Google Docs. You can
Docs or LibreOffice, which is open source. It's very good as well. It's like Word, but just doesn't look as pretty.
Yeah, and if you do 100% need it to be Word, you can always type it up in Google Docs, and they have an option where you can
convert
turn it into a
to
Word doc.
docx. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's also an online version of Microsoft Word. I don't know if you know about that. It's like
We'll save that for another episode.
It's
'cause
Diet
we're
Word. Yeah,
running on, and we need to figure out.
It's a minute and it's currently 1 hour and 11 minutes and 11 seconds.
Okay, well, we need to figure out some special way to close this because we haven't figured that out yet. Every podcast has a special way of closing it.
I mean, I could just do like a weird screech.
Are you paused?
No, we're not paused.
Don't screech.
I can make a lot of noises.
No.
Maybe I'll do them one day, but I don't know if I'll clip the microphone.
I don't think. Oh, you won't clip the microphone, but I still don't think we should do that because I don't want to hurt little Timmy, 10-year-old in the back of the minivan.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to hurt his ears.
Oh man, I don't want to hurt his ears either because then I'm gonna hear about it. I'm gonna see his parents at the church, and they're gonna be like, "We listen to your podcast in the car." By the way.
Okay, why are they whispering? Please don't whisper.
Because the pastor's praying and they're trying to talk to me.
Don't talk while your pastor's praying, folks.
I hate when people do that. They talk while the pastor's doing something, or like everybody's singing and they're still talking. I'm like,
there are some people
I don't.
who we don't talk about that talk while.
Look,
while people
I
are
don't
singing.
dislike you if you do it because you know who you are and I know who you are.
We know.
I'm not going to talk to you about it in person. I would just like to say
I'll do it
that
from the
I
comfort of this
I would-
stool.
I would prefer that churchgoers sang when everybody else was singing instead of catching up with their pew mates or neighbors.
Like they
while they're
have,
singing.
they have at
They
towards
have
the beginning
meet-
and towards the end.
they
They
have
have
like the weird meet and
fellowship.
greets for reason. They have fellowship. For
They
a
have
reason.
fellowship time for a reason.
But
Okay,
closing line for AMD versus Intel. It's worth it to spend more money on a laptop. Bare minimum $600 in my opinion. But make sure it's the right one. Review it a lot. Research a lot. Do your research. Don't just go to Best Buy and ask the.
Don't ask Todd.
Don't ask Todd at Best Buy. Hey, what's the best laptop for
And Todd will be like,
for browsing the web and using PowerPoint? Because he's going to give you something that's crappy, and you're going to hate it.
Either crappy or really expensive and crappy.
Or really expensive and crappy and not worth it.
Because
So if
I'm
you-
sure Todd gets some sort of percentage on what he sells.
Later on, we'll
Screw
do it.
Todd. Todd is a horrible person.
Later on, we'll do
Sorry
an
to
episode.
anyone named Todd.
Later on, we'll do an episode where I'll talk about the best laptops to buy cheap for pretty much every price range. But I'll save that for later.
If anyone listening is named Todd and they work at Best Buy, I don't actually mean it. I love you, Todd.
I
You're the
loved
best.
your work in what was
The
it
Todd
called?
commercial.
No, there was a Disney movie where the fox is named Todd. The Fox and the Hound.
Yeah.
I loved your work in Fox and the Hound, man. That was so good. I loved it. I like the part where you almost got shot. Anyways, it's been fun. I enjoyed ranting.
Talking to you guys.
My throat hurts. I need water.
Is it really?
Kind of. It's very dry. in
Sounds like
here.
your little baby boy, because my throat don't hurt. Anyway, I love you guys. You're great. Thank you for listening. Don't do that. We're going to have to cut that now.
I am not cutting that kiss out. Mm-mm.
Please cut it out.
Fine, I'll cut it out. All right, so I'll cut out the past like 20 seconds of conversation. It's fine.
Ugh, now I have to say I love you guys again.
Yeah.
Ew.
Why? All right, 3, 2, 1. All right, well that's gonna wrap it up for the episode.
We love you guys. Thank you for listening.
This was recorded on January 20th, 2020, and I expect to have it out by the end of next week.
Yeah, that's reasonable.
Along with the pilot.
Okay.
This is going to be uploaded at the same time as the pilot. So if you want, you could skip the pilot and go straight to episode 1. That you don't really need to know a lot of the stuff from the pilot. But
also, if you're thinking a week, that's pretty long. You also have to think, we haven't been doing this. We were just talking about how if you don't know something, look it up on Google. And we may have to do that a lot for the editing process.
No, I know. I already have it planned out. I know how to edit it all. It's just a matter of doing that. And it's very long. Yeah. I would say, because I have to listen through all of this for errors, and then I have to it's a complicated process. I'm not going to get into it. I'm just going to say
thanks. Talk about that in another episode.
Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed. I hope that any weird bass thing didn't destroy the speakers in your car. I hope God bless you if you're listening to this in a public restroom.
Okay.
Bye. Bye.